All right, so thank you again all for coming. This is the Graduate School, the Insider Scoop Workshop. So my name is Kristen. I am one of the 2 SARC graduate interns. I now can officially put MEd after my name because I received my master's in educational counseling almost exactly 2 weeks ago. And my degree posted like 10 days ago. So it is finally official. So I'm very happy. Putting MEd after my name was the first thing I did for this workshop and in my email the moment my degree posted. And a fun fact about me is sometimes I put ice cubes in my soups. I don't do well with temperature. Spice, I have a pretty high spice tolerance, but when it's hot, as in temperature, I don't do so well. A lot of my family members and friends find it funny, but it's okay. You do what you gotta do. So if the soup is too hot, sometimes even in public, I'll request a couple ice cubes. So the itinerary for today is there will be some foundational and broad information on graduate school and what it entails. The second part will be on decision and preparation on going to grad school and the process of applying and committing. And then the third part, which is, the other half of the title of the event, is the inside scoop portion. So I'll definitely share with you my personal experience applying and now having officially ended my grad school experience. And I have, just some tips that I have learned from my experience to you. So what comes to mind when you hear the words grad school? Do you imagine yourself in an in-person program, in an online program, doctoral, master's? So what do you think of when someone mentions grad school to you? I'd love it if some of y'all can share your thoughts. A more difficult program than undergrad? Yes. At the very basic level, that is definitely true. Any other input or things you've heard about grad school? Any assumptions you may have? Yes. That is definitely a one part of grad school is the tuition is higher than undergrad, regardless of whether you're at a public or private institution. I'm not sure if I saw someone have their hand up. I might have missed it, but if you wanted to unmute and give us your input, go ahead. But with what y'all put so far in the chat, those guesses or the information is definitely correct. So to go more in depth about it, graduate school generally is an institution that awards post-grad degrees. That can mean master's or doctoral. And there are different kinds of each of those degrees too, which we will definitely go into in a little bit. Another way to define grad school is a space to enhance your knowledge in a specific area, whether it be to be more informed about it or increase your income, because there are certain fields or a lot of jobs that financially reward you or appreciate you for taking those extra units. Or going to grad school can also be to advance or change your job, whether it be to advance in the hierarchy of this current company or organization you're with, or advance to a completely different field, and at the same time obtain a higher position. And of course, definitely one thing to know about grad school is when you apply, you either have to already have had your bachelor's, whether it be, BA, BS, BM, or you will be receiving it at the end of the school year that you're applying. So for example, if you are a 4th or 5th year right now, and you are applying to grad school, that you have to be rewarded your bachelor's degree by June when you graduate. You can't apply earlier than that because they want that reassurance that you have your undergrad degree. So I mentioned, a couple minutes ago about the different degree types when it comes to grad school. So here's a breakdown of the most common ones. Note that I said most common because there are definitely more out there that are more specific. So with masters, there are 2 bigger umbrellas. So there are the categorical ones, and then there are the specific professional ones. So what does that mean? The categorical ones are ones like MA, MS, and maybe even MEd, because, for example, like an MA can be about anything, right? And MS can be about any subject as well. Whereas the specific professional umbrella is things like a master's in music, an MPA, an MBA, where by the name of the degree, you already know what the subject is on. And when it comes to doctoral degrees, I don't know about y'all, but definitely before entering grad school, I mostly heard of PhDs. And sometimes I encountered someone who had an EDD. But I didn't really encounter a lot of the other doctoral degrees. And just realistically speaking, a lot of your professors probably most likely have a PhD. And that means it's a lot of studying and researching about the topic that they teach, the field, what they currently research in at UCI. But of course, there are other degrees as well, such as MD, when you go to med school, there's PharmD, there's PsyD, there's JD, and of course, there are other degrees as well. So if you are, or, even if you aren't currently, but maybe in the future, if you consider grad school, it's very important to research in detail what kinds of degrees are out there, because you may find one that is the best fit for you, that you probably didn't know about beforehand. So what are the components of grad school? Regarding structure, it is a bit different from undergrad, for sure. The classes are longer. I am a UCI alum, and if the structure of undergrad classes is still the same, I think I remember classes being like 50 minutes if they were on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe twice as long if they were on Tuesdays and Thursdays. However, in grad school, classes are about 2 hours. Some programs are 2 hours and a half. My program specifically was 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's definitely different depending on what kind of degree program you're enrolled in, what institution you're studying at, because each university and each program gets to determine how they run that. With grad school, another big component is the cohort system. So it's not like undergrad where there are, thousands and thousands of students and, like a myriad of different classes for you to take, where you get to meet really different people with every class that you take. With grad school, it's a smaller class size, like graduating class, as well as literally like in the classroom. And then most likely you guys will move together throughout the program. Even if you take the same class but at a different like time from each other, you're still taking that same class during that semester. And so you are still moving at the same pace with the same courses as your colleagues. And so it actually is super helpful because then you can rely on each other for help, for support, and you understand what the other people are going through. There's definitely a wider range in background as well, specifically age. In undergrad, it's pretty traditional to have students somewhere between 18 and 25 years old. Of course, there are students outside of that age range, but in grad school, it's a lot more common. In fact, in my program, at least, there weren't that many of us who began the program right after undergrad. I was probably maybe one of maybe 10, 12 people out of a cohort of about 65. So most people in grad school actually have taken a gap year or a couple gap years, or weren't originally interested in grad school, but then eventually changed their mind and wanted to go back to school. So it's definitely diverse in that aspect. A lot of professors in grad school programs are also like adjunct professors, for the lack of better phrasing. They are not full-time faculty members usually, like how in undergrad, where you can expect this professor, that professor to teach some class in your major every quarter. In grad school, most professors actually have a full-time job or position elsewhere, or at least in a different department somewhere. And then on the side, they teach 1 or 2 classes of your grad program. I can't speak on whether that's a guarantee in doctoral programs because I was in a master's one, but at least for master's, not just in my program, but I've spoken to students of other kinds of master's programs as well, and that definitely seemed to be the pattern. So that is something that you can expect. It might sound, different and, needing some adjustment, but I think it's definitely helpful. I didn't realize that at first, but after a while, I realized having different adjunct professors like that provided a lot of different perspectives in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. And you get to build connections with people from colleges and universities that you otherwise probably wouldn't have crossed paths with. In grad school, there's more group work than undergrad. For my program, we actually didn't have a lot of exams. I actually only recall 1 exam throughout my entire 2 years, especially with my degree where it was, on counseling. It was a more practical degree, that it's not very, science-y or like theoretical. So there was a lot of practical work, hands-on work, and collaborative work with my classmates. I know it's common in undergrad to, be hesitant when it comes to group work because you don't know what is the work ethic of your group partners. But one thing I definitely learned in grad school is that worry will most likely go away. People in grad school are people who want to learn, especially since it's more costly, so they are aware of how much they are investing to get this degree. So they are definitely more proactive with their work ethics and collaborating with you. When it comes to responsibilities in grad school, there is some kind of research or capstone aspect, whether it be like a final capstone assessment project that you do before graduating, or some kind of research paper or exam. There's also field work, most likely, where you do hours or get practical experience at some site that is relevant to the degree you're pursuing. There is the integration of your studies as well as work that you get from field work. You might have an exit exam. In my program specifically, there was no exit exam. We just had the capstone project where we like assessed a student program and analyzed it. But some programs have an exit exam that you have to take. And, you know, again, the proactivity as an individual being in the program, but again, also proactivity, the expectation of proactivity that you can have for your classmates, and that proactivity expectation definitely will be met. So what happens when it comes to the decision on going to grad school? So the first thing that you can do is ask yourself, is grad school right for me? Would going to grad school align with what I want to do professionally or in my career? Does it make sense for me to go? Is it practical? What aspects of grad school do I not know too much about and need to research more before making a decision, etc. These are definitely questions that I asked myself as well. And it's a step that I think sometimes may be overlooked, but is definitely important. Again, a reminder, grad school does cost more than undergrad, but it's not just a financial investment. It is your time, it is your efforts, and so it's really important that you make the best decision for yourself. Now, how do you find the right program? So let's say you have thought about grad school, you've gone through that question list, and you've decided, yes, I am going to go to grad school, but how do I know where to enroll? What's the right program for me? How do I know that? And based on my experience, I realized that these 4 factors are what helped me determine which was the right program for me. You know, I want to be completely transparent with all of you that, of course, even after carefully assessing these factors, there's no guarantee, you know, that your program will be perfect. In fact, no program is perfect. Every graduate program is constantly trying to assess their student needs and what areas they, you know, what are their areas of improvement so that they can be a better program for future students. So keep that in mind, even as you're going through this process of deciding the right program for yourself. So the first component is practicality. What I mean by that is it practical for me to go to X university for Y program? For me, I had to be practical about where I went because it was a family expectation, an agreement that I will be staying local. I'm from OC, Orange County, and so for me, being practical meant that I couldn't apply for a counseling program that I liked in Nebraska, let's say. I couldn't even apply for programs in NorCal if there were any that I was interested in, because part of my grad school experience that I expected for myself was to commute. And that meant applying to schools within an hour of a drive from home. Another part of practicality is it financially okay with what I have planned and saved for grad school? So it's those kinds of aspects is what I mean by practicality. The second one is curriculum. I think this applies more to master's students than doctoral students, because with doctoral, a big part of it is you are researching and working with a specific faculty member on your research. Whereas with a master's program, it's not really like that. You are taking classes similarly to undergrad. And so for me, seeing what the course curriculum was at each program I was applying to was important. They almost always list all the courses you will take on the program website. So you will get to see literally which classes you will take, what the topic is. Sometimes they'll even organize it by, fall or spring, so you know when you're taking it. Sometimes they'll have like a brief description of the course as well. So you really get a better understanding of what you will be going through in the program instead of just relying on the degree title and guessing. Professors and connections. This applies to master's students, but is even more important for doctoral students. Again, because of the research that you will be doing with a specific faculty member. With professors, they are the ones in the field. Even if they are adjunct professors for your program, they still have their main job at wherever it is. And so it's important for you to build a relationship with them, to see how they can be a part of your network in order for you to advance professionally. They can help you with finding a fieldwork site. They can let you know of job openings that they're aware about, whether at the site they're working at or another one. And so it's very helpful to build those connections with professors, just like how you've been encouraged to do so during undergrad here at UCI. And the fourth component is sociocultural dialogue. To be honest, this was an aspect that I didn't really think about before entering grad school. I entered grad school in August of 2020. So it was at the height of what was going on socially and politically in society here. And I think it was a big official step in higher education programs realizing the importance of integrating these topics and conversations into the classroom at both the undergrad and graduate level. And that was when I really realized how important it is to talk about it, especially since my program was, education related. It was a counseling program. I'm going to be working with students when I graduate. And, we all know that students are more than their grades. They are more than their academic achievement. They are a whole person with multiple identities and unique experiences. And so it is only necessary to incorporate or at least consider sociocultural dialogues in whatever academic subjects that you are studying, so that you have a well-rounded experience and know how to give others a well-rounded experience too. So, materials of grad school. It is somewhat similar to when you applied for undergrad. There is the application fee. If I remember correctly, it may be around the same price as undergrad or more. It really depends on the program and the institution. So that I can't really give you an exact number or guarantee you a certain number. Transcripts. So just like when you graduated high school and applied to UCI, you have to send your high school transcript. So when you apply to grad school, you also have to submit your college transcripts. If you have attended multiple colleges, yes, you do send transcripts from all those institutions. It doesn't matter if you are applying to grad school straight out of undergrad, or if you've taken a long gap and then coming back. The moment you apply, you still have to send in your transcripts, however long ago it was. There are the personal statements, just like when you apply to UCI. Depending on the institution and the program, they can have one main prompt, or they can also have a couple other short response questions, or like a specific question like, what about the mission statement resonates with you? I think that's a fairly common one, but it varies between programs and institutions. So it's important that you look into that and make a note of it so that you answer everything and submit all of your materials. Along with personal statements, there's also resumes/CVs. So that's something different from applying to undergrad. For me, when I applied to grad school, I didn't have a resume, if I'm being completely transparent with you. And it was something that kind of worried me. I was afraid that I would look unprepared compared to other applicants, but still made it to grad school, still graduated. So when I say, don't stress about it, really don't stress about it. Grad school programs understand that there definitely are going to be a lot of applicants who are coming straight out of undergrad. Some may have work-study experience at their campus. Some may have had part-time jobs before, but some may not. I didn't because of personal family reasons. I couldn't have a job. But there are other ways to formulate your resume. There are volunteer experiences. There are skills that you've developed in and outside of the classroom that are definitely relevant, and you deserve to put that on your resume for the admissions team to review. So if you are in a similar boat as how I was, don't worry about it. There are exams. So a big grad school exam you've probably heard of is the GRE. I personally actually did not take the GRE when I applied to grad school. It's not too common because there are still a lot of programs that ask for it, but for sure, there are a handful of programs that don't. I did not intentionally apply to ones that didn't ask for it. It really was a coincidence that the 4 programs I applied to, none of them required the GRE. So I did not take it. So I do apologize that I don't have specific or personal tips to give you regarding the GRE exam, but generally the GRE is similar to the SAT. I know that much, and so there are certain materials and tools that you can use to prepare for that exam. I believe you do have multiple times to take it and retake it if you're not satisfied with your previous score. So that is something to look into as well when you're applying to grad school. Does this program require it? Does that program require it? And see what you have to do. Another part is letters of recommendation. So I think in undergrad, a lot of schools did ask for letters of rec, whether from your teachers or counselors or anybody that you felt comfortable to ask to write you a letter of rec. And grad school is the same thing. You can choose from a mix of your professors that you had interactions with here at UCI, or certain staff members to write you letters of recommendation. They usually require 2, I believe. Some programs will require 3. So that is something to consider too. So if you like certain professors here at UCI, make sure to maintain that relationship with them, because it'll definitely be useful if you need a letter of rec. And lastly, which is not a guarantee, is an interview. So some programs do it, some programs don't. For some programs, it depends on which round as well. So for example, USC's counseling program did not have an interview portion. However, I also applied to Cal State Long Beach for the Student Development in Higher Ed Master's Program, and that did contain an interview. And if they have an interview, it can vary in how they conduct it, whether it's an individual one or a group one. And so that's another important aspect to research about when you are applying to grad school, so you know how to properly prepare. I also wanted to mention some resources when it comes to thinking about and preparing for grad school. Because this is a SARC event, I wanted to highlight the SARC resources. There definitely is the grad school prep page on the SARC website. Contains, a list of questions similar to one of my slides from earlier, as well as, tips on narrowing down grad school programs and how to ask for help. Another resource is the SARC graduate team. So as part of the SARC team, there are graduate advisors who are PhD students here at UCI who dedicate some of their time each week to helping students in SARC. And then, starting this academic year, this past year, there was me and my other SARC graduate intern, where we are master's students. And so you can talk to, any of us. You can get the PhD perspective. You can also get the master's perspective to see what it's like in order to narrow down what you would like to study. I also have a recommended timeline here. I know there were some students who had questions about, when should I start researching? When do I ask for letters of rep? When do I do what? And so while this timeline is certainly not like a definite thing, it is just my suggestion to you. So the first thing is, program research and exam prep. I put, anytime from between May and July, but of course, starting ASAP is best. And I recommend around that time period because that's when you're wrapping up the school year, you are heading into summer. And so you have more time to dedicate to having a detailed research, studying for the exam and stuff like that. Applications usually open around August, and you have several months to apply. When applications open, that is also when I suggest ordering your transcripts, especially with having the pandemic happen. Sometimes your transcript, deliveries can be delayed. And so it's best to order them ASAP. Don't do it like in May or July because you want to make sure that your spring grades are updated on your transcripts. So wait until August, maybe early September to order them so that you can ensure all of your grades are on there, at least, for the time being. August is also when I suggest you ask your professors for letters of rec. I know UCI is on a quarter system, and so you don't actually start school until, like late September / early October, but it is definitely okay to reach out to professors and staff members to ask for letters of rec, before you see them in the beginning of the school year. They really appreciate the heads up and the long, time period that they can have to really think about what they want to highlight about you and write you a thorough and good letter. So asking early is always the best way to go. By, beginning or mid-September is when I suggest that you have your first draft of personal statements and resume finished so that you can ask your peers, professors, staff members to review your materials. Always have someone review your materials, even as a working adult. There's definitely no harm in doing so. You want as much feedback as possible so that you can improve and also like see and compare different feedback and perspectives. Applications are due usually anytime between November and March. I know My USC one, they actually had 3 rounds of deadlines, and the first one was in November. And you know, some programs are like that, where they have multiple deadlines for you. Of course, if you turn it in early, then you likely have priority for scholarships, but you do have that option of applying or submitting your application later. Some programs have only just a single deadline, like in January or like in February. Like I know I did apply to the Cal State Dominguez Hills counseling program, and they had, you know, just one deadline of February 1st. So I know that with my USC application, I had to prioritize that because they had an earlier deadline since I wanted to submit in an earlier round. But I knew that I didn't have to rush for my Dominguez Hills application because I was given more time. They can tell you your results anywhere from February to May. It really just depends. And around then is also when they would like you to commit to a program. And of course, just like, you know, high school and undergrad, when you finish with the school year and once your grades have been posted, submit an updated transcript. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but you know, the bottom bracket, between June and early October is when I recommend you take exams if your program does require it. You can retake exams every, I think, 2 or 3 weeks or so. I can't specify the amount of days. That's something you have to look into, but you are allowed to retake it. And so you want to give yourself enough time to study, take the exam, wait for your score, you know, decide whether you want to retake it, study a little bit again, and then retake it, etc. So the inside scoop. What is my inside scoop on grad school? So as I had mentioned, I applied to 4 programs. It was USC for the educational counseling program. It was Long Beach for the student development and higher ed program. Oh, by the way, the USC one was a master's in education. The Long Beach one was a master's of science, so an MS. The Dominguez Hills was also an MS. It was in counseling with the option of college counseling. And then for Fullerton, it was an MS in higher ed. The reason why I applied to these schools, the first 3 is because they were relevant to the career I want to pursue. I wanted to be an academic advisor, still do. And then the reason why I applied to Fullerton's higher ed program, 1, because it is local to me, I can commute there, right? So going back to the practicality component. 2, even though it wasn't specifically a counseling or advising program, it was still on higher education. And that broadness can serve as a benefit, where I can branch out into different aspects of higher ed if I want to. Again, for me, it was the most important thing was going to a local university. So I had to consider that. I chose to look into courses over looking into the professors because I'm a master's student and I'm not doing research with a specific faculty member. And so knowing what courses I'll be taking was important to me so that I can compare. As mentioned earlier, no GRE requirement. It really relieved a lot of the stress that I had. My programs having different application deadlines allowed for a lot of flexibility for me on when to prioritize what. And one thing I certainly learned was that each program, each institution will have a different application format. And so you'll get to learn the different system of each school. Each one is a little different, even if there are similar aspects. The outlay of the application is different, and some may have different requirements as well. Like I believe one of my schools required 3 letters of rec. Some require just 2, and I believe one required just 1. I don't remember which school it was, but yeah, there's definitely variation. What was my takeaway after I enrolled in my grad school program? I realized it was very important to designate learning/study spots for myself. So not doing work in my bed, because then, psychologically, I confuse relaxation time with work time and work mode. And I think a lot of my cohort mates said similar things. So having a designated spot to do your work versus leisure is very important for self-discipline. The cohort structure really helped with bonding and supporting each other, and setting that proactive expectation with each other when we did have group work. And commitment to DEI and willingness to learn from each other. That was definitely something that I took away from my grad school experience. It was no longer purely academic and theoretical. I did see a lot of questions when you guys RSVP'd. I did see a lot of questions about my specific program. So I wanted to dedicate a couple minutes talking just about EC. So first off, why did I pursue counseling? To be honest, I actually originally wanted to be a teacher. My whole life wanted to be a math teacher. I was an educational sciences major here at UCI, and originally planned to apply for the MAT program after graduation. But I did student teach as part of one of the CalTeach classes, and I realized that teaching wasn't for me. But I was very conflicted because I still loved education and I knew I still wanted to stay in education. So now what was the question I asked myself for a good 2 to 3 weeks during that time. And as I went through the different professions in education, when I came across academic advising, I knew it really resonated with me. It was a good balance between administrative work as well as student interaction. I still get to advise students and do academic planning, but I don't, address like in classroom matters like with teachers. So why did I commit to the EC program? Realistically speaking, again, we said this is an inside scoop workshop, so I will be transparent, right? EC was actually the only program that I got admitted to. I did not get into Long Beach's program. For Dominguez Hills, there was there was a complication error thing in my university application, so my application couldn't go forward in the process. And then I got USC's acceptance letter before moving on to the interview round for Fullerton's program. And so by then I knew that I wanted to commit to EC. Out of the 3 counseling programs I applied to, this was the one that saw my potential. So, and I did really like the courses that they offered. So I knew that that was the best choice for me, instead of, taking the broad route and enrolling in Fullerton's higher ed master's program. How costly is EC? That was one of the questions, and a lot. I had to take into account that USC is a private institution and not a public one. And so my tuition was higher than if I were to be at a public university. If you want to know the specific tuition cost, it is up in the between 60 to 90. Okay. It depends on the scholarships that you received as well. I did receive one, and so that certainly helped. But the thing about grad school is they are understanding that they need to offer students loans. Most of my cohort mates did take out loans, student loans. And unlike undergrad, they give you a much bigger portion And so students are still able to pursue the program if they would like. What was the curriculum like? We definitely had courses on counseling, individual as well as group counseling, but that wasn't all. And that's what I appreciate about my program, is that we had courses addressing every aspect of students. We studied student development. We studied career development for career counseling. We studied like interrogating systems of inequity in higher ed. We studied the history of college and higher education and see how things have changed. We studied equities regarding higher education, equities and inequities regarding higher education access. We learned about laws and ethics of counseling. So it was a pretty well-rounded curriculum. What were the interactions like? Honestly, my professors and my cohort mates were very empathetic. They have been in this field for a while, whether they are, you know, classroom faculty and, you know, professors, or if they serve other positions in different colleges. But they've been in the field for a while, and they understand the necessity in addressing student needs and evolving institutions to fit student demographics. Is the mission statement and true DEI a priority? Of course, this is always easier said than done. And, you know, like I mentioned earlier, no program is perfect. And so there definitely are areas of improvement when it comes to inclusivity and DEI. I was one of maybe 10 Asian/Pacific Islander students in my program, and the rest were mostly Latinx. That definitely created a learning space because we weren't too informed about other identities and other student experiences. But admitting that you don't know something and wanting to learn is hard. And so actually that brings me to my next question of what is EC doing for future students, is that there's actually a curriculum revision going on right now that I'm actually a part of, revising the curriculum so that it's more relevant to what students want to study, as well as being more inclusive in representation, in the readings we're assigned, as well as staff, and how to highlight and empower each other. These are my recommendations for, you know, when you look into grad school. Again, research ASAP. Try to aim for academic achievements because they do ask for your transcripts and your self-reported GPA. There are many different types of degrees, remember, so it's important to understand the differences as well as similarities between them so that you can know which one is more aligned with what you want to do. Remember to see if your programs require exams or not. Some may and some don't, depending on where you apply. Location, finances, all those practical aspects. If it, you know, is relevant to you, paying attention to representation on the faculty as well as in the community to see what they do to increase representation and what they do about DEI. Reach out to those faculty members in the program. Ask for informational interviews. Ask what kind of career guidance they can offer you once you're a student in the program. Again, with the designated study and workspace, very important. Do not overlook that part. Ask for help and build connections. As undergrad students, especially since you have access to SARC, but also while you're already in grad school, still ask for help and build connections because you don't do everything alone. And what I highlighted at the end, deadlines. Different programs have different deadlines for different things. So it's important that you stay organized and make lists for yourself so that you can accomplish everything. So that is my grad school workshop and inside scoop on my grad school experience. we have a couple minutes for questions. If you have any, go ahead and unmute or type it in the chat.
Hi, I have two questions.
Yes.
The first one, would you be able to please share the websites where you were giving us, I think it was like information in regards to finding like peers or graduate school information, something like that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And then second, do you know where I would actually look for if I was interested in a combined program where they do like master's and PH?
So there are different combined programs, but a combination of master's as well as doctoral is not a combination that institutions offer. The only combination programs that they usually have are like MAT, where you get your master's as well as some kind of credential at the same time, whether it be a teaching credential or like a PPS, which is a counseling credential. But to combine a doctoral with a master's is not really something that they do. So if you want to do both, then you would have to do both separately.
Yeah, and actually I'm going to go ahead and come in here as well. So what type of PhD program are you interested in, Vanessa?
I believe for mine it would be the PS, the psych, the counseling one.
Okay,
A
and
PsyD maybe?
Yeah, the Y, yeah.
okay, do you want to be like a therapist one day or a psychologist?
I'm sorry, you got cut off.
Oh, are you hoping to be like a therapist or a
Yes,
psychologist?
yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so for that type, you would do your master's separately and then you'd go into like a Psych D. For example, some people decide to do a PhD in psychology. So there is actually programs that are specifically to PhD. So PhD is very different, as you probably heard in this presentation, is that it's very research focused. And so those programs, like the one here at, let's say, UCI, there's a PhD in cognitive sciences here, that often does include a master's degree along the way. So I guess the answer is always it depends. But I know that we have some resources to certainly help you out that we have in the chat for you too. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there that there are some, it just depends on what you're looking for and what your career is.
I see. Okay, thank you both ladies.
Of course, thank you for attending. Yes, I can certainly link it in an email that I will send to all of you afterwards. This workshop was also recorded, and so it will most likely be on SARC's YouTube channel shortly, maybe in a week. Thank you for asking. Yes, go ahead. I personally have not heard that. And since I'm not a student, a grad student at UCI, I don't want to give you the wrong information. So if Carissa knows more, you can definitely jump in, Carissa, to confirm.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So obviously they don't want you to dip out, right? And be like, I'm going to get my master's degree, for free, and then, end from there. So um, I think it's never the intention, right? To, I guess they want you to commit to the doctoral degree, but there's a lot of reasons why many folks might have to maybe stop their degree for whatever reason that might be. And so, yes, you probably do have to make that commitment, but in the end, if you do have to stop for any reason, you still have that opportunity to do so. Okay, they're not going to force you to complete your degree. Okay, if you, let's say, can't or are unable to or don't want to further your PhD anymore. Does that help?
I'm assuming that if you have more detailed questions about it, you can probably try asking admissions and see what they say. You can talk to, master's and PhD students at UCI. Reaching out to the graduate advisors here at SARC would be a great way to start that, to see if they have heard that from their peers who have studied at UCI for a while. So those are some great ways. That was a really good question though, and I learned something. So thanks for asking.